Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most emotional and politically charged stories to come out of the Middle East in recent weeks, a story that connects the war in Gaza, U.S. foreign policy, and a deeply personal mission of rescue that reached the highest levels of power. It's about how the Trump administration intervened to help rescue a woman from Gaza, a 59-year-old mother of a U.S. Navy sailor in what's being described as one of the most complex civilian evacuations since the war began. This case has sparked intense discussion about humanitarian priorities, political motivations, and how the U.S. decides who gets saved in a war zone. According to reports from the Washington Post, the woman, named Olam Ferwana, had been trapped in Gaza for months as the fighting between Israel and Hamas escalated. Her son, a U.S. Navy medic stationed abroad, had been pleading for help through official channels, contacting the State Department and reaching out to anyone who would listen. When it became clear that standard diplomatic efforts weren't moving fast enough, his appeal eventually reached senior members of the Trump administration. What followed was an extraordinary series of back-channel negotiations involving Israeli military officials, Egyptian mediators, and U.S. representatives operating under intense political and security pressure. What makes this story so gripping is the combination of personal tragedy and global politics. On one hand, you have a mother trapped in one of the most dangerous areas in the world, without electricity, limited access to food, and daily airstrikes shaking the ground. On the other hand, you have a U.S. administration trying to navigate a conflict that's already dividing American politics, international opinion, and even communities back home. The decision to intervene for one person while thousands of others remain trapped raises powerful moral and ethical questions that go far beyond this single case. The rescue reportedly took place after several weeks of coordination between American, Israeli, and Egyptian officials. According to sources familiar with the operation, Israel agreed to a brief pause in air operations in a specific corridor of southern Gaza, while Egyptian forces facilitated her movement across the Rafah border crossing. It was not a full ceasefire, but rather a controlled, time-limited pause that allowed a handful of people, including Ferwana, to leave the war zone. The U.S. reportedly provided diplomatic guarantees to ensure that the convoy would not be targeted and that she would be received safely on the Egyptian side before being flown to safety. When Olam finally crossed into Egypt, she was reportedly exhausted, dehydrated, and emotionally drained. Witnesses say she had been surviving on minimal rations and had lost several relatives in airstrikes that struck her neighborhood. For her son, the Navy medic, it was a moment of overwhelming relief, but also one of bittersweet realization. He later told reporters that while he was grateful beyond words, he couldn't forget the friends and relatives his mother had to leave behind. She got out, he said, but so many others are still there. Every life should matter. The Trump administration's involvement has generated a mix of praise and criticism. Supporters see it as a bold and compassionate move, proof that the U.S. can still project moral leadership and take decisive action to protect its citizens and their families. They argue that the intervention shows a level of responsiveness that bureaucratic systems often lack, and that it demonstrates the personal attention the administration is willing to give to individual cases when lives are on the line. Critics, however, question why this rescue happened while thousands of other Americans with family in Gaza continue to wait. They accuse the administration of cherry-picking cases based on media attention or political optics, and of using humanitarian stories to soften the image of a government still deeply supportive of Israel's ongoing military campaign. The timing of the rescue is also significant. It happened as high-level ceasefire negotiations were taking place in Egypt with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff representing the Trump administration. Many analysts believe the successful evacuation of Farwana may have been strategically timed to highlight the administration's diplomatic influence in the region, particularly as it tries to rebuild relationships with Arab nations and demonstrate that it can deliver results. The White House has not publicly confirmed this interpretation, but it's clear the story was quickly amplified in U.S. media, painting a picture of humanitarian success amid chaos. There's also a deeper, more emotional layer to this story that resonates with families across America, especially those with loved ones serving in the military. For many, the image of a U.S. Navy sailor fighting to save his mother from a war zone feels both heartbreaking and inspiring. It's a reminder that the global conflicts we watch on the news aren't just distant political struggles, they reach into the homes of ordinary people, bridging continents through family ties, loyalty, and love. The sailor's persistence, his refusal to give up, and the fact that his mother's life was ultimately saved serve as a powerful symbol of determination and hope against overwhelming odds. Still, the story also raises difficult questions about fairness. Humanitarian agencies have repeatedly warned that selective evacuations where only those with strong political connections or Western ties are rescued create resentment and deepen the sense of injustice among those left behind. The United Nations estimates that over 1 million people in Gaza are still in desperate need of safe passage, but with border crossings tightly controlled and diplomatic coordination limited, only a small fraction have been able to leave. Every successful evacuation like Farwana's is a miracle, but it also highlights how few miracles there really are. U.S. officials involved in the rescue have emphasized that this was not a standard operation. It required the cooperation of multiple governments and relied on a rare moment of communication between military forces that are otherwise in constant conflict. According to sources, several attempts were made before the plan succeeded, with earlier efforts failing due to sudden airstrikes or breakdowns in coordination. Each delay increased the risk that the small window of opportunity would close permanently. By the time Farwana finally made it out, the region had already endured months of intense bombardment, and most escape routes had been destroyed or blocked. In the aftermath of the rescue, human rights organizations have renewed their calls for broader humanitarian corridors to allow civilians, especially dual nationals and medical patients, to exit Gaza safely. They argue that what happened with Farwana should not be the exception, but rather the model for how international diplomacy can prioritize human life over politics. The Trump administration, for its part, has signaled that it may use this case as a framework for future evacuations, though experts caution that the logistics and political complexities make such missions extraordinarily difficult to repeat on a larger scale. As this story continues to unfold, it serves as a reflection of both human compassion and the limits of power. It shows what can happen when political will aligns with personal determination, but also exposes how fragile and selective humanitarian efforts can be in times of war. For every person who escapes, there are countless others still waiting, praying, and hoping for the same chance. In the end, the rescue of Farwana is not just a tale of one family's survival. It's a mirror held up to the global conscience, a reminder of how interconnected our world has become, how decisions made in Washington or Jerusalem can change the lives of people in bomb-out neighborhoods half a world away. It challenges us to ask difficult questions about responsibility, compassion, and the value of every human life. And it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that in war, who lives and who dies can sometimes depend on politics, timing, and luck more than anything else. Thank you all for watching. If you found this story as powerful as we did, make sure to leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Should the U.S. do more to help civilians trapped in Gaza? And what does this risk you say about America's role in the conflict today? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth explanations of the world's most important stories.